Hey guys, welcome to the show. And this is not just the normal show we used to have, but this is going to be something very outstanding and talent engaging. Now, what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about critical writing in research. And remember, like I said earlier on, when we were talking about the need for this training, we did mention that we live in an era where AI tools happens to be the talk of the town. A lot of people are using loads of artificial intelligence related tools in supporting their writing and all that. But what can we actually say that is some of the limitations that is attributed to this use? Some of these limitations are maybe you find out that a lot of people are now being very, very generic, false information, inability to have a very clear reporting. And this is one of the challenges that has seen academic writing for this particular era. Like this era of academic writing is really battling a lot of limitations. And that is why it is very important for us to understand why critical writing is still a very much more needed skill. So I've conducted numerous research in several areas in public health. Like when I looked at my last publication, I have over 40 publications, about 45 or 50 or thereabout. Lots of them are actually being considered for publication currently. And one thing that I can actually say for a fact that is a very needed skill for anybody who is an early career researcher or you're just new into the academic writing industry is critical writing. Critical writing is very, 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 very paramount. And in this video, in today's session, I'm going to share to you how we can actually write critically. What is the importance of writing critically? How can you actually know when you're being too descriptive versus when you're actually maintaining the critics in writing? So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about in our session today. And guys, this is going to be a very outstanding one. So if you're just new to this channel or to this link, or you're just watching my videos for the very first time, so I'm going to enjoy you to like, share, subscribe, and actually share it out to somebody out there who this video is actually going to be very, 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 very important and helpful to them. So if you're actually watching me, I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I'm going to do something very, very, very talented. I'm going to show you guys how you can actually get going in your writing. And we're going to jump into that right away. And what are we going to start with? So I'm going to show us something very interesting. I've actually prepared a slide for us out there on how we can actually get going on writing. And I'm feeling this from the systematic review network for low and medium income countries. And this is also in line with my team. So I run a research team, citizens team, where we have 4 fundamental objectives. One of the objectives we have in our team is to develop sound systematic review evidence for anybody out there. Maybe you might be a clinician or you might be a policymaker or somebody, a PhD student or a student, undergraduate, whoever, or any tier of studentship you happen to find yourself. This team has that particular interest in helping you in assisting you with the right evidence for your research. Now, another objective we have in our team is to train people. We actually have that ability to train you on how to write effectively and give the best. Also, in line with that, also consulting. We're open to consulting in our team and in our community. So it doesn't matter where you find yourself, whatever thing that happens to be the issue, you can always reach out to us and we'll be out there to help you. And the 4th fundamental objective is that currently we're leveraging AI techniques, right? So we show you how to use AI related technologies to actually enhance our research. So we're actually working on lots of machine learning projects. Yes, actually, I'm doing my PhD in machine learning. So let's dive in straight away. So my name is David Chinecham Innocent. I'm going to be walking you down on the aspects of critical writing in research. I know that's why you're here. I'm going to do something you want. I'm going to also show clear-cut examples. Then I'm going to go hands-on writing on critical writing in research. So let's go. Yeah, so when you look at this image out here, it's actually trying to think, what are we thinking about? So critical writing also goes in line with critical thinking. Like when you think about critical thinking, you're thinking about it as, or you're actually reasoning from the part of you want to explore ideas from multiple phases. You want to look at it from this standpoint, you want to look at it from this other standpoint. Maybe your partner just brought up an argument or your friend, and you want to know, like, who is actually at fault. You consider this, you consider that. You're trying to raise an argument, trying to argue from this standpoint, you're trying to argue from this standpoint. This is the same thing you actually need to apply in your writing. Like you really need to apply this same style and approach in your writing. So let's dive in there. So we're not just going to work without an outline. Everything we're going to do today is going to be centered on an outline. And the first thing we're going to be talking about is what is critical writing? What is critical writing? I'm going to explain that. Then next, I'm going to shower us with the discussion of how can you actually embark on writing critically. Then on the third line, I'm going to show us, as somebody who is a researcher or an aspiring researcher, how can you actually critique your write-up? Applying theories, to support your arguments and all that. So we're going to now Kasala with talking about descriptive versus critical writing. How are we now going to draw the line? We're going to tabulate. How can we now know the difference between descriptive and critical writing? Because by the time I'm done showing you what is critical writing, and how you can shower the discussion critically, and how you can actually use theories to critically develop your evidence, I'm not going to show you what is now the difference between critical writing and descriptive writing. So guys, also, before we move on to that, after we're done talking about that, we're also going to talk about AI automation for critical writing. Remember, guys, we live in an era of the use of artificial intelligence, and we're not just going to boot out the use of AI. It's very important for us to know how we can actually leverage using artificial intelligence to build our critique, because it's not really going to make any sense when we just talk about AI automation and we don't talk about it appropriately using critical writing, right? That's it. Then I'm going to leave you guys with exercises. I'm going to leave you guys with some exercises for your critical writing skills. Now let's just jump in there. Now, what is critical writing? Now, remember that critical writing involves something very simple. Just analyzing. You want to analyze, you want to interpret, you want to evaluate. Remember, I just said you want to analyze, you want to interpret, and you want to evaluate. So think about it this way. You want to make an argument. You want to say something as simple as a boy is named Obi. Somebody else can actually say from the point of there is a boy called Obi. Now, if you just say there is a boy called Obi, that's descriptive. You've just described that there is a boy called Obi. But now, somebody else can actually say that a boy is called Obi rather than calling him a girl. That is going a bit further. You've now involved that outside from calling a boy Obi, we can also call, there is also another creature that is called a girl or thereabout. That sounds stupid, or that sounds very, very, very childish, but that is just the fundamentals of critical writing. That you're not just writing, but you're analyzing all the write-ups that you're making. You're also interpreting, and you're doing what? You're evaluating your ideas or your argument rather than just describing it. Let's say you're watching this thing and you're in the toilet or you're in the bathroom, or there's something we used to call bathroom and bathroom, right? And you're just looking out there and you're seeing a soap that is placed on top of there. You can actually look at that soap and you're like, yeah, this soap is causing what we call ladder or it's foaming. Now somebody else can now say, instead of being descriptive by saying this foam or this soap, is causing foam or is causing ladder. Someone else can actually say that salt actually causes ladder rather than causing maybe flames. I'm just trying to say something. It sounds very weird, but when I'm going to put it down, I'm going to show you guys examples with a clear-cut research title and a topic, right? Cool. Now, rather than just making that argument or making that statement simple, you can actually look at it from another standpoint that a stone can actually cause this rather than a stone causing. So it can actually be anything. But the idea for critical writing is that you're not just going straight to the point, you're looking at it from another angle of something else that can actually do it, that can actually be in existence. Now we are actually getting there. Now let's talk about why is critical writing essential? Why is it essential? Now, critical writing is essential because of one. Number one, it demonstrates deeper understanding. Critical writing tries to demonstrate deeper understanding. It tries to challenge assumptions and fosters what we call academic rigor. I can actually see some of these things that I've actually talked about here. So, meaning that when we are writing, the idea for us to be critical when we are writing, or let's say you're starting a PhD and you're trying to write a discussion or any part of your work, your literature review, anything that happens to be what you're writing, the idea is that you're trying to demonstrate deeper understanding. You're trying to make us know that aside from saying that malaria is caused by plasmodium, you're trying to tell us also that contrary to evidence from this person, that malaria can be caused by maybe bad hygiene. Right? Instead of just looking at it, viewing it from one point by saying that malaria is caused by this, somebody else is also saying that malaria can be caused by bad hygiene. Or similarly, another evidence supports this. So we're going to demonstrate all this. Don't worry, I'm going to do that for you. All right, so what are the tips for critical writing? What are now the tips? What are the tips for writing critically? Now, whenever we are writing, we have some key things in mind. We are asking why, we're asking how, and we are trying to bring in lots of evidence and sources. We're not just asking how, why. We are referring. Let's say you're writing academically now. You're referencing this author. You're countering it with another author. You're also supporting it with another evidence. So it's more of now saying you're comparing different perspectives for one particular point. Remember, guys, you have to be very patient with me because I'm going to show us hands-on practice how we can actually write critically. So even if you're listening to this as an audio, when you pay attention to some of the things I'm saying, it's going to be very, 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 very simple. Remember, we are still thinking. And like I said, in the tips, we're asking how, we are looking at why, and we're trying to know, we're trying to look at several references. So that means when I'm going to define, for example, I'm going to use a very common example that we use out today. Okay, I can say sexually transmitted infections, right? Cool. Now let's say sexually transmitted infections is defined as this. Now I'm not just now to say why, to bring in the why. I cannot say this is due to the fact that it is caused by this. Now I cannot bring in another evidence. Remember that we're trying to bring in evidence and sources, thereby comparing perspectives, right? Which will now lead us to knowing where there are gaps. You see, it's very simple. I've just broken everything down now. So that means when we say Adobe et al. 2001 defined sexual infections as this. In contrast, Ahmed 2004 argued that sexual infections is explained to be this. So it means that for every point you are writing in your essay, you must be citing from two different sources. You must be making arguments from two different sources. You must be comparing different perspectives, because there is something I used to say, guys, and that is what? There is no right or wrong in research. There is no right or wrong in research. In the world of research, there is nothing that is wrong and there's nothing that is right. It is just all about justification. You can actually tell yourself now that there is a study that your supervisor is saying that should be done using a qualitative tool. But somebody else can actually do a research using a quantitative tool. So if your supervisor is saying that no, that this particular methodology can only be explored using a qualitative approach, that is what he's saying it because he has justifications to suit his claim. Whereas there is another researcher outside there that can actually say that no, this is going to follow a quantitative approach, and then they'll have to do that. So that is what another perspective. Whereas somebody else can actually say, no, I'm going to use a mixed method approach to approach or to apply it to this particular word research. So a mixed method perspective is might be better, qualitative might be better, quantitative might be better. Remember that all this should be applied in your writing. Your writing should be able to do what? Analyze viewpoints from diverse researchers. So now, like guys, let's now get into that particular aspect. Now, how do you now discuss an essay critically? Because remember that we live in a world whereby somebody can actually go out there and use one particular AI tool and say, write an essay on this. You just give that prompt and you work out. Somebody else can actually walk inside that same search engine, and give a more detailed prompt that can actually provide something that happens to be what? Much more critical. And that is what differentiates the both of you, because AI cannot take away your job or your ability to be productive. Rather, the person that is going to take away the opportunities that you have is somebody that can actually use artificial intelligence tools in writing much more better. So they know how to paraphrase properly, they know how to use it to write critically, they know how to use it to build their argument, and that is just it. Because if you don't know how to use it to build your argument, then it's going to be a very, 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 very big problem for you. Now, remember, in terms of how to discuss an essay, the first thing we need to actually learn out there is to do what? You need to start with a clear structure. You need to start your essay with what? A clear structure. Remember, the essay should have an introduction. Remember, I'm going to come back exactly to this on the later course of this particular interaction. Right? So, first of all, you need to start with what? You need to have an introduction, you need to have a body, you need to have a conclusion, it needs to be well organized, right? Logically. Because when there is an introduction, it helps you to build your write-up to now enter into the body, which will now enter into the what? Conclusion. Now, the body now has several elements, because when we talk about the body, there may be various subheadings in your essay. Let's say you're writing about malaria, maybe you can have causes of malaria, symptoms of malaria. This can actually form your body, prevention, risk factors. You could have maybe some of the diagnostic approaches, maybe some of the management measures, treatment measures, and maybe economic implications and all that. This could actually form the body of your essay before you have what? Your conclusion. So now remember, these are the things that are actually going to form the critique of your essay or your academic write-up. Because if your write-up doesn't have a clear structure, you're going to find it very, 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 very difficult to build your argument. And now, so guys, that is it. Now the next thing is there needs to be you need to state your thesis clearly. And when I talk about stating your thesis clearly, what I'm talking about is what? The main point of your argument needs to be what stated. That's also usually what we can actually call the aim. The aim of your write-up needs to be very clear, particularly at the bottom of your introduction. I'm going to walk us down through all that. And also, you need to do what? Now, we're now flipping into the area of what? Writing critically. You need to do what? You need to use evidence effectively. You need to use what? Evidence what? Effectively. And how do you use evidence effectively? You need to support your arguments with reliable data. You need to use examples. You need to support it with citations. Enough. Like, what makes your essay rich? I've actually seen people many a times that actually get, maybe they are writing an essay or a kind of research work or something, and you're writing a work of 4,000 words and you have just 5 references, that is very, 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 very poor. You can't be writing a work of 4,000 words and you have 10 references unless there is that particular specification in the guidelines. That is where you need to actually know that for you to write an academic piece of 3,000 words or 2,000 words, you need to have not less than 30 references. What shows that you are reading widely, we call it wider reading, evidence of wider reading, is that what there is enough support to one particular argument. When for each line, for each particular point you make, you need to view it from what we just said previously here. You need to compare it from different perspectives, particularly in your tips. So that is for use of evidence effectively. Now the next thing is you need to actually acknowledge counter arguments. So it means that while you're writing, you need to be reviewing from different points. So this is not different from what I actually said previously in the tips, where you need to compare various perspectives. So whether it's in the positive aspect or whether it's in the negative aspect. Let's say you're trying to write something and you're using a theory like held belief model to support your argument or make counter arguments. You need to also look at other models, like maybe trans-theoretical model or maybe theory of reasoned actions. You just need to use other theories or other viewpoints. So actually, that makes you a researcher. What makes you a researcher is you're argumentative, you're always arguing. Somebody is saying that this is why. You can say, no, this is why. But you can actually show X. X shows this, Y shows that. We are going to actually explain this. And also, you need to actually have a strong conclusion for every key point that you make. Right? So, for every time you talk about malaria is caused by this, according to Bola 2001, malaria is caused by this. Similarly, this person explained that malaria can be determined by this. Now you will need to have a strong conclusion that this entails that malaria is caused by some of these factors. So that is that for how to build your essay. I'm going to actually demonstrate that in an example. Now, another very vital area is critiquing with theories. It is very, very, very important for us to do use theories in our write-ups. Critiquing with theories are actually very, 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 very essential in our write-up. So what do we mean by using theories to critique is that whenever you're discussing a point, what makes you a researcher? Theoretical research methods are actually very important in science because they actually try to make you look at it from diverse viewpoints. Like there was a time I've always had a session. If you go down to some of my videos or some of the information I've actually been passing out there, I've always talked about diverse research paradigms. We have what we call the quantitative research paradigm, which is the positivism. We have the interpretivist, which is where we use theories a lot, and we've got other paradigms like pragmatism, constructivism, feminism, and all that, right? So what point am I trying to make is that, let's say you're discussing something in your essay about healthcare utilization or utilization of technology models. In that situation, you need to use the technological acceptance model to critique your evidence, to support your writing, because your ability to use theories will make you pass your essays. So if you're a student out there and you're struggling to write your essays and all that, trust me, this video got you, because once you analyze your theories or you critique whatever you're writing appropriately with right theories or fundamental theories, it's going to give you that rich information. In short, when you look at several schools or marking rubrics of people that are actually doing assessment, you find out that your ability to demonstrate sound, in-depth theories makes you very exceptional in your writing. Now, also another thing there is you need to always evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of any point you raise. We're going to also show these things, right? Whenever you're writing any type of academic evidence, you need to always talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of any point that you're reading, or you're trying to adopt a particular design or a method. Always argue with the strengths and what weaknesses. They make a lot of sense, and they try to help you highlight where there is something's actually falling short. We're actually going to demonstrate this right away. Now, Also, you need to support with critique. Also, try to use examples whenever you're writing. Let's say most people using generative AI. One of the things they fail to do is to do what? Is to do what? Use what? Examples. You need to do what? Use examples. You need to use examples enough. Like that shows that you are viewed beyond what you're just writing. Right? So, and that is going to actually help you to justify your argument. Because when you've made the argument that this guy argued that the risk factors of cigarette transmitted diseases can be what maybe unprotected sex, you can actually give an example. This, for instance, in the report by this, where children were exposed to maybe unprotected sex, something like that. Like it could be anything. It could be maybe maybe obesity is caused by diets or maybe using excessive food or whatever. Right? So you can actually give an example. For example, a child in California did this. Okay, you should know how to build your logic. You need to build your argument, make a lot of logic. That's going to really make a lot of sense. So again, there you need to actually synthesize your ideas. That means when you're now done, you need to now combine it, right? Let's say you're using health belief model and technological acceptance model, or maybe theory of medical utilization and one of that related to, you need to now know how to marry them together. I'm going to actually give a clear-cut example live on this training for you guys to actually get started with what you want to do. Now, we now have all the information that we need. Remember, let's go back to what we talked about. We talked about what critical writing is, I explained what critical writing, why it is some of the essentials, some of the tips, and I talked about how you can actually start discussing it, and I've talked about how you can actually use theories. Now, I'm not trying to compare where do we now draw the line between writing descriptively and critical writing. So there should be a place where we do what? We draw the line. So we can now say, no, you're being too descriptive, or no, you're being what? Too critical. Is there any need of not being too critical? Whether it is a level 3, level 4, level 5, level 7 writing, level 8, level 100. Criticality is very, very important. The same way you argue, you make your arguments. In short, what most people need to understand is that critical writing is not different from what we do every day. Like it's just the same arguments that we're making every day. That is the same thing that happens in terms of critical writing. So that's just it. So now, when you look at descriptive writing here, the purpose of descriptive writing is just to inform or describe the fact. That's just it. So the focus is now, what really happened? What has happened? What is existing? You can actually look at it this way. Oh, there is a boy sitting on the tree. Or I saw a boy sitting on the tree yesterday. That is, you just describe the fact. The fact is that the boy was sitting on the tree, and that is the focus. You've told us what happened, that the boy was sitting. And the language is that you're just being objective. That boy was sitting on the tree. When we talk about being objective now, is that it is clear that is the object. Objective. That is what you saw. That's the reality. That's objective reality. Right? So it means that you didn't start telling us, oh, one theory showed that when something stands up and climbs a tree and sits down, it can sit down. No, that is not being objective again. You're not being argumentative, you're being subjective and other. No, we're saying object. A boy was sitting on the tree. So that is what descriptive writing is. That is why most times when people use ChatGPT or other AI tools like Gemini and all these ones, and they just put in a prompt, talk about my essay, maybe they give you an essay in school, describe social determinants of healthcare or whatever, or talk about healthcare utilization in Nigeria, for example. You just go there and say, I discuss healthcare utilization in Nigeria. That is bullshit, because it's just going to be describing. There is never a place whereby it has to. Critical writing now means the purpose now is to analyze, evaluate, interpret, maybe try to compare it with another area, like maybe Ghana, their kind of healthcare system, to now draw inference, lead us to understanding that, oh, Nigeria is even really improving. That is what critical writing means. There is a way you have to give your prompt such that the purpose is now going to be to analyze, to evaluate, and to interpret the information. Now, that the focus is now going to be to tell us why it happened, how it works, and its implication. All of them just telling us what Nigerian healthcare system is. And that the language is going to be analytic. When you're looking at the analytic, it's comparing views, it's evaluating points, and is what it's argumentative. So that example of Nigerian healthcare system has just solidified everything. And now, look at the example I'm actually giving us here now. When you say descriptive writing, now, it's just say the study shows X. Critical writing means the study shows X but fails to consider Y. So that means beyond just telling us about that one line, you're also showing us what? That another thing exists. You're not telling us, your topic is to discuss Nigeria's healthcare system. You're not just telling us about the primary, secondary, and tertiary healthcare system. You're also telling us about other layers of healthcare system that exist that we might not have considered. You're not also telling us about Nigeria now. You're also painting a picture about countries that have similar economic conditions like Nigeria, how their own layers of healthcare system is. That is what descriptive writing, critical writing entails. That you're going beyond what we can see to also analyze other areas, right? The study reports X, but in critical, you see, the study reports states X, but overlooks Z. So it means that the reader now understand that you have read widely. And that is actually what makes you what? Outstanding as a researcher. So in terms of the language, like that, it's not just about this was collected or we saw this. It's not about this was collected, but may be biased because of other things that we've actually seen. You know that critical writing is all about analyzing, evaluating, and interpreting information. Thank you. So now that we've now understood what critical writing means, I've just actually laid out a prompt, an example. So guys can actually just copy this prompt. It's actually there on the comment section. I'm actually going to leave this prompt there, or you can actually maybe screenshot this and put it down. And put it out there and just try to ask yourself that what we're talking about is not different from this, because we're actually going straight up into demonstrations workshop. We're just going to have the demonstration right away, and I'm going to get that done right away now. We're just going to open AI ChatGPT, which is one AI tool that I know a lot of people out there actually using. Now I'm just going to do something very. I'm not going to try and make us actually understand something. For example, if I'm going to ask ChatGPT right now, I can actually ask it now. Discuss sexual transmitted diseases in 200 words in one paragraph. Now, I can actually ask it to do this, right? And while I'm actually waiting, now, what can we actually see here? We can actually see that it's just being so descriptive, right? It just being so descriptive. Now it's talking about sexual transmitted diseases are this, it is this. Now tells us some of the types. It now goes on to tell us some of the symptoms. Now it has actually moved into the prevention. It has now moved into the diagnosis. It has now moved into the healthcare initiatives for addressing it and all that. This is what descriptive writing means. This is what a lot of people are writing. Now, is this critical writing? No. Now, what are we going to do now? I'm going to show us an example. Now, I've actually opened up with an example here, prepared something for us here where I actually manually did it. But I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again by starting it afresh to show us how we can actually do this right critically, manually. And also how we can actually use AI automation to get it done. So guys, catch you there. So I'm just going to do that quickly. Now remember, before I actually get that done, here I actually talked about some of the AI automation, which is what I already said here. Now, but now to get that started, I'm just going to create a new tab here. We're just going to create a new tab here. What we have always been doing when the AI was never in existence. Okay, so now what I've done. So now the topic here is what? Sexual transmitted disease. It can actually be anything. So, okay, I can actually decide to use anything, like anything, but I'm going to use this because I already laid it out in the example here. So now the first thing we said, remember here in our slide, we did mention that the first thing we need to do whenever we want to discuss is to do what? Have a clear structure. So I hope we haven't forgotten about that. We want to do have a clear structure. So I'm just going to come back here. I'm going to say, okay, I want to have a structure. So I'm talking about serial transmitted diseases. I'm going to talk about the introduction. Then I'm going to talk about, okay, I want my introduction to capture the epidemiology. Okay, so I'm just going to capture epidemiology. So that means data. Okay, sorry, I can actually spell that. I'm going to talk about some of the risk factors, right? So maybe I might want to talk about the symptoms and all that, but I'm just going to keep it very short so that it can actually be very easy for each and every one of you to understand. We're going to talk about here the management measures. So I'm going to look at the risk factors and risk factors flash causes, right? So this can actually be used interchangeably. So just going to create the body. So this is what forms. All this here is something that's going to form my body. I'm going to have what? Conclusion. Okay? So I can actually spell that correctly. Cool. So, and also another thing I need to have here is my references. So I'm going to go up the references. Now, since I already have that, I have my risk factors, I have the management, I have the conclusion. So all these here are going to culminate as what? Are going to culminate as the body. But since I'm going to talk about more of data in the introduction, I'm going to just take more of the epidemiology to put it inside of the introduction. So that's no problem still. Now, what does critical writing mean? Remember, we are talking about the whole topic here is centered on what? Critical writing. So we're asked to critically evaluate the burden of sexually transmitted disease. So I couldn't say Africa, but let me just leave it open. Now, how can we actually get started with it? You know, the problem we have most times is that there are so many YouTube videos. There are so many videos out there. There are so many training programs out there, but nobody actually, or people rarely have you on site putting it down on writing. And that is why we are here to help you bridge that gap so you can actually know exactly life through practice when you are when you're actually on point and when you are not on point. All right, so what am I going to do right now is I'm going to actually start. And the very first thing you usually need to start, so guys, this is actually my opinion. The first thing you usually need to start whenever you want to start your essay is start by telling us about the concept. Maybe you can actually review what we call gray literature. What do you mean by gray literature? Some of the gray literature like it could be like WHO report, it could be CDC, right? So it could be maybe some like UNICEF. So some of those reports that are actually out there that are published, maybe sometimes we refer them to as well. Some of what we call what gray literature by gray and green. I can actually spell that correctly. Right? Gray literature. Now, it's very, very, very important for you to actually start your essay with that. So I'm actually going to start that right away. So now the first thing I'm going to do, remember, this is where it's actually start. I can start by saying, according to, now remember, it's actually important that actually go online, read lots of reports. I can actually come to Google, I can actually start what is sexually transmitted diseases. I can actually open Google Scholar. I will really need that to actually get citations, and they will actually be very, very, very relevant for me. Now I can actually start here by saying, according to a report, let's assume I've read the literature from WHO, according to a report by World Health Organization. So I will now put WHO, right? Because that is the first time I'm writing it. Okay, I'm using British writing. That is why it's marked, but I can actually change that to USA. So let me just change it to USA since that is what my computer is automated to. And so according to WHO, report by WHO, right? Sexual transmitted, diseases are infections caused by viruses, comma, maybe it could be bacterial, could also say bacterial, and fungi through sexual contact. Full stop. Now, this is it. Also, I can also similarly critical writing now. This is only on course. I'm talking about course, right? Cool. Similarly, remember, sometimes in your introduction, you can always talk about, okay, what your essay is going to talk about, right? But we just want to have a snapshot of what it looks like. Or maybe sometimes can actually start with global data. That's so very important. It's so cool to start with. But the idea is to know how the report is flowing. Now, similarly, CDC, can actually say Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That is known as CDC. Now, pointed that STDs, maybe at this first place, I can actually use STDs so that I don't use it again. STDs entails diseases that arise from sexual related, maybe sexually related association between individuals, thereby transferring viruses. So don't mind my definition, guys. I'm just trying to build my write-up. Okay, so I'm just going to put this down. Right, cool. So here I'm not going to say, okay, I'm gonna put the references. So let me assume I'm citing APA, CDC 2020, or here, and also I could actually put here WHO 2019. Right, cool. Now, what have I now done? I have explained this, but from two different standpoints. I can actually say, in line with the report by WHO, or I can actually put it this way, in line with the recent report by UNICEF. Okay, you can actually put the meaning of UNICEF. UNICEF 2025. STDs account for 20 million deaths every year. This is inconsistent. Another view. This is just something I said. Like we are just writing from one point, we're also writing from another. This is inconsistent with the WHO 2024 annual mortality on STDs. Okay, so in order to make my paragraph very not so long, so this is inconsistent. This is, I can say this is consistent. Okay, let me see more better English. So guys, I'm from Nigeria, in England. This is consistent with the WHO annual report on STDs, which reported over 19 million deaths are recorded annually from diseases transmitted by infection. Full stop. So now this is data. It's very important for you to have data. Remember, it's very, very important to have data. Okay, cool. Now I'm just going through the normal route. Now, so in terms of epidemiology here, we can actually, I just want to keep this. Now, remember, the next thing, before I go into epidemiology, the next thing we also highlighted here is what we need to present our main argument early and make it specific. So we can always come here and now say, okay, not here, but here, can I say that this is so will highlight the burden of STTs globally, and this would be done by epidemiological risk factor sequence. Stop. So you need to make your argument, or you say this essay will argue the body. So you can actually say we'll highlight, we'll evaluate, we'll argue, we'll assess, we'll whatever thing that's actually good. So you can say we'll argue the body. So that's it. So okay, guys. So I didn't just look at it from one particular viewpoint. I'm actually looking at whatever thing I'm discussing from several viewpoints, right? So that is that. Okay, so guys, now, so looking at it from here, right, looking at what we have actually explained here, you can actually find out that, so we start with a clear structure, we state the thesis clearly, we use evidence effectively to support our argument, we try to acknowledge counter arguments, we conclude strongly. And so that means that when we are now done here, so it means we can now move ahead to talk about how we can actually apply these to our risk factors. And that is actually very, very imperative. So that means the next thing we're going to do here right away now is to, can I just start by saying, okay, so can I actually come and say, okay, according to, maybe you can say Nathan 2018, the risk factors for STTs include unprotected sex. Maybe you can actually talk about other things that maybe use of maybe wrong contraceptive. For example, I'm just trying to put a list of now. In contrast with the health belief, okay, maybe we can actually use a type of theory, maybe any type of theory. Maybe we can use a theory like remember, we're trying to talk about what I'm trying to talk about here is how we can now apply theories. That's why I want to specifically discuss sort of the risk factors. Now, how do we now apply theories here right away? Let's say in contrast with the ancient theory of disease, maybe disease causation by Ahmed. I'm just giving an example, right? About Ahmed, 1873. This posits that STTs are caused when people sin. That's it. So that means we can actually counter this now. Say this implies, that STDs are caused or determined by a wide holistic factors that needs to be addressed. So that's it. But the truth is that the idea is that we're not just discussing stress point. We are contrasting our idea. So we can actually come here and say that in line with, or can I say, okay, in line with the evidence by, so this is by Nathan 2018, a report by December 2023 pointed that STTs caused by maybe unprotected sex happens accounting as the most first one. Guys, remember while you're writing, while you're citing, you're using your reference manager, you also cite them, right? So I could actually I have Zotero installed here, and I always use it to cite. So Zotero is a very, very nice tool for your reference managing. So that is just it. And this is just something I'm going to talk about management. Each time I actually highlight about one management measure, I contrast it from another viewpoint. Each time I talk about from another management measure, I also do contrast it from another viewpoint. And that's just it. So guys, now the next thing I'm going to do right away is I'm going to show us how we can actually use OpenAI to like ChatGPT to write critically. Now remember, I've actually highlighted a prompt here, down here on mine, where I actually want to talk about sexual transmitted diseases, but I'm just going to copy that and to take a look at this. Take a look at this. This is discuss sexual transmitted diseases, and it's all highlighted it in a descriptive manner. But I'm just going to copy this, paste this here. I'm going to take this out. I'm just going to say, all in, let's say, for example, 300, right? In one paragraph. I'm just going to hit that in. I'm going to hit that in. And it's going to be out. So I'm going to help us now build this prompt to actually write this, because this is the most simplest thing to do. Now look at what I'm going to do now. Now, if I want to build that prompt, now, right, that is going to actually give me that criticality I'm going to want to say. I'm going to say, okay, this is what I'm saying. I'm going to say, discuss sexually transmitted. Now, let's say, for example, I want to say using APA citations and references, discuss sexually transmitted diseases. Okay, I can actually be more specific. I say for each point, compare it with several author views. And I'm going to say, okay, then explain symptoms of STDs from diverse author views well cited. I can also say again, explain the management, simple management measures for STDs. Argue this with several theories, comparing and contrasting in between and stating potential limitations. Discuss the risk factors STDs, and I also apply the same thing. This is just an example. Or in, let's say, for example, 700 words. I want to show you what I'm talking about. Yes. In long paragraphs. More specific. Cited. So that's it. I'm just gonna hit that in. Now remember, I'm not searching on the web. This is not me talking about. This is not me just trying to search on the web. You can always use search, write your write-up, compare your views, try to look at what you're writing, and definitely make sure you come up with something very important. This is actually very, very rudimentary. Like whenever you're writing, you need to always check out what you're writing and make sure that the references are very correct. It's very, very important. Now let's take a look at this now. Now you look at it. Say, sexual transmitted diseases remain significant public health. According to WHO, there are this, that, and that. Now this guy argued that persistent burden. Similarly, this guy emphasized that the global rise is this. However, this guy take a contrasting stance. Are you seeing what critical writing should be? Now, take this and that. Now, despite this effort, now this is the limitations actually coming in there. Others like Hermes criticize that the limitations is actually in this. Now, in terms of symptoms, The symptoms of STDs vary widely depending on the type of infections and all that and all that. Now, for bacterial infections, this, however, symptoms. Now, this is what it means. Like, you need to be looking at it from various viewpoints. Okay, so I'm going to drop the prompt for this on the chat box. I'm also going to teach you guys further tutorials. I'm also going to teach in other tutorials how you can actually build your prompt effectively. Now, see, something the management that is trying to relate with behavioral theories like this, right? And that's it. Wachowski advocate for this and all that. So this is just what it is. I'm sure if you can actually look at this and actually see this, and you see that each of the arguments that have been made is well discussed and well in line. So this is how we need to actually give this prompt. And I've just shared my secret out there for free, how you can actually automate your write-up. Make sure for each point you lay out on the AI, you must make sure it is well specific and well detailed. And that way, you can actually make a lot of sense in what you're writing. So guys, I'm just sure this video has actually been very helpful for you. If you're watching this, try and like, share, subscribe. In the next part of it, I'm going to show us further how we can actually do what? Develop our evidence much more better. And that is how you actually need to continue flowing until you get to the very end. So I've actually left some exercises out there for us. And some of the exercises that I've actually left out there is I've talked about how impact of climate change. You can actually talk about this, critique this. Also look at some of the barriers to achieving universal healthcare coverage, especially some of the social determinants of health among older adults in rural areas, and discussing the rationale for using the CAPS tool as a resource bias tool in a systematic way. This is just the point. Remember that while you want to be critical, you really need to make sure you have a wider viewpoint. And that is just it. So guys, I'm happy you found this video very useful, and I'm sure you want to subscribe to this channel because this is the right place for you to be. Remember that we are coming from the scientific research team and systematic review network for low and medium income countries. So if you're interested in joining our community, link to join our community is down on the link below. And I wish you guys the very best of luck. Like, share, and subscribe. And I'm also going to see you guys maybe sometime in the future. I'm also going to be talking about all that things that you actually really need to actually get going in your writing. So I'm sure you found this video you found it very helpful. So see you guys. Bye.